You can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. I grew up in a somewhat unconventional family, I think, in the sense that, well, both conventional and unconventional. My father was in the Indian Navy. My mother was the daughter of an Indian naval officer, and I think just their own marriage was unconventional. It was not an arranged marriage, which I think in India at that time was already fairly unusual. They both came from different parts of India. They didn't speak the same language, so they spoke to each other in English. That was also probably unusual. And then they had 3 daughters, and they were not the kinds of parents who felt that it was necessary to have a son, although everybody else seemed to think it was necessary to have a son. So I think the thing that I was raised with, that I was most aware of, was there were 3 things. One, that it was a passionately nationalist family, in the sense that my father and my mother and their parents felt incredibly lucky that India was now independent, and I think we were raised with the sense that we owed India something, that we were lucky to have been born into independent India, and that we were privileged and therefore had to give back something. I think the importance of girls and boys being equal was very important. Because we were 3 girls, because everybody always asked my parents, "Hi, aapke koi bete nahi hai?" You know, that kind of thing. I think, like, from the beginning, we were on this thing, ki, like, you know, my father would say things like, "Haan, hamare koi bete nahi hai, but any one of my daughters is better than any of your sons." So, you know, that was like, "Oh, thanks, Dad, no pressure," you know. So, I think that was another important thing. And then I think the third thing was this whole issue of, well, you don't have to play by the rules. You know, you don't have to play by the rules, meaning not doing what's right or fair, but you don't have to play by what everybody else says is, you know, this is how things should be done. And I think that those 3 things, I think, have really defined me in lots of ways. I kind of feel like we're on the cusp of something really big. I don't know why. I can't put my exact finger on it, but I think the world is sort of at this moment when it's either going to be catastrophic or we're going to kind of redeem ourselves. And I'm not quite sure which of those 2 things. And in that, I think the role of women, and actually even more than the role of women, the role of the feminine in all of us is really important, is going to be really important. Why is that the case? Because I think regardless of the culture, regardless of the religion, regardless of the class, regardless of where in the world you are, women have so disproportionately been on the receiving end of oppression, on the receiving end of no power, on the receiving end of not having a voice, that if we give them that chance, if we allow them to share with us, okay, how the world could be different, if we engage with a vision of the world in which both men and women are allowed to be more fully human, you know, then I think we may just have the opportunity to kind of pull back from jumping off the cliff and, you know, going into nothingness. And I think we are trying to figure that out. And my feeling is, what I've seen from my years of working to support women's movements, is that there has been that kernel in women. A lot of us have lost it also, because a lot of us have been taught that, you know, I think even in myself, a lot of us felt that, okay, in order to become a strong leader, as my father said, "Beta, you have to be like a boy, right? You know, you have to lead, you have to be strong, you have to be..." So, but is there a way of being strong by also being gentle? Is there a way of being passionate by also being caring? And that's the sort of dialectic that I think we are sort of discovering. And I think what really moved me was in that terrible set of the aftermath of the horrible rape in 2012. All these young men, you know, walking on the streets and talking to me, and I was so angry, you know, and I was like, "आप ही लोगों ने ये किया है, आपके वजह से हम यहीं पे हैं, you know, we are suffering because of men." And then them saying that, look, you know, we are also confused. We are also victims of violence. We also need to understand, you know, the kinds of things women expect of men are also crazy. You know, we expect them to do everything. We expect them to take care of us, and they should be sensitive, and they should work, and they should be, you know, manly man. And I mean, what is it? I mean, are our expectations based on anything real? And then they are not allowed to show any emotions. They are not allowed to be afraid. They're not allowed to be scared. They're not allowed to show vulnerability. They are, you know, they are not allowed to say कि भाई मुझे नहीं जाना है ऑफिस, मुझे घर में बैठ के बच्चों के साथ खेलना है. They are never allowed to say that. And so my hope is that women and men together can start a new chapter, actually, a chapter in which we say, throw out all the old things. Let's not say what, I think for a long time feminism has been, I also want to play that game, I also want to be there, I also want to be an astronaut, I also want to be a doctor, I also want to be a, and that's fine. But let's talk about what is the world we want together, men and women. I think to be a feminist, a real feminist, is to embrace the feminine. I think what we've lost is actually because we felt we had to be so assertive about our feminism, which was nothing. It was just saying our feminism is what? Our feminism to me is humanism. To be a feminist is to be a humanist, is to say that all people matter, that all human beings on this planet, whether you define yourself as a man or a woman or a transgender person or as somebody with no gender, deserves respect, deserves dignity, deserves opportunities to be fully themselves and live in a world where people respect and treat them with care. I think what we lost was the feminine in feminism, you know, in part because we were feeling so pressured, we were, you know, our backs were against the wall, we felt like, you know, nobody is even hearing us. And so the tools that we use, you know, Audre Lorde, this wonderful poet in the US, she said you can't dismantle the master's tool. You can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. And we in the feminist movement, most of all, we needed to know that. You know, we were the ones who realized that, okay, if we got that for capitalism, if we said like, okay, you can't dismantle the master's house with the tools of violence, with the tools of war, with the tools of weapons, then how much more so would that be true with feminism? Why are we using aggressive, pushy, male, quote unquote, male tactics to assert what we know to be true? Can we think about different ways in which to share that truth? Can we sit together, men and women, in a space without violence? But I think it takes we have a long way to go before we get to that place, because there is so much violence in our world. And we have we've all grown up with that violence. Women have grown up experiencing it, but men have also grown up experiencing it. And part of the reason I think men take violence out on women is, for many men, the violence they experience in their lives is not something they can take out on other men. They may be weaker than other men. They may come from a lower caste or from a different class or from a different community. They may not have the strength or the ability to speak out. Or they may be soldiers, you know, in a military. And again, that violence comes out somewhere. So I think we have to reimagine our society in such a way that it is not a violent society. And then men and women can be assertive. Men and women can be vulnerable. Men and women can be, and you know, everybody else who may not want to define themselves as a man or a woman. I think what I would say to young people thinking about how you want to make change in the world is, don't think that it's only about joining the social sector. It's about having a conscience in whatever work you choose. So do something that you love. Do something that really makes you like wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I get to do this job, you know. And whatever that is, whether that's being a filmmaker, whether it's being a musician, whether it's being a businessman, whether it's being a teacher. And when you have a country that has 100 billionaires, which is what India now has, not to mention a middle class that is a good 150 million strong, then we should be putting something back. We should not be just sitting around and saying that, okay, you know, hukumat ko kuch karna chahiye, government should do something, it's not our responsibility. It is your responsibility. If the streets in front of your house are filthy, it is your responsibility. You need to take action. So again, I don't feel that it's necessary to just do it by joining a social sector organization. You can choose to give to a social sector organization. You don't have to wait to become Bill Gates or, Azim Premji, or all of us have enough extra money. If we are buying Starbucks coffee 3 times in a week, you know how much that costs. And you can put that aside and you can give it to something you care about. So I think for me, the most important thing is that women speak their minds and stand up for what they believe in. I think too often they swallow what they really think or what they really believe, and they put themselves after everybody else. And I would love women in India to feel like they can, and I think they already are, but I would love to see a little bit more self-care and taking care of yourself and speaking out for yourself, and also speaking out on not just on behalf of yourself, but also of others who you feel may not be in a position to be able to speak as freely as you can. So that's what I would say, I think.